Coming up, wireless ignition.
Thank you.
We bodged some brake lines.
This pipe is unclogged.
The joys of reviving a dead car.
It's running. It's no longer running.
And
Let's burn some rubber.
welcome back to the third part of Project Castellón. The very first 3 series, E21 323i, finished in olive green, that's been abandoned for the last 26 years. To recap from the previous episode, we found that the fuel system was deliciously varnished. The cooling system had stuff growing in it.
Oh my god.
And was utterly disgusting. But even after addressing all of that and thorough service of the engine, the car still wouldn't come back to life. The compression of the engine is pretty much non-existent. Mind you, this was after flooding the engine with fuel. However, we did get it to run with starting fluid. Not sure who that woman was in the background, but anyway. We left off concluding that this mechanical fuel distributor is bad and control piston inside it is stuck. When the engine sucks the air in, the airflow meter plate lifts, and in return it moves the control plunger inside the fuel distributor, which determines how much fuel to send to the injectors. It's a fairly simple system, except when it's not. The plunger being stuck means the airflow plate couldn't move and let air into the engine, so it was flooding it with fuel and the car is unable to start. Now we're going to take it apart and fix this old school Bosch fuel distributor.
Time to remove this devil's device. First I'm gonna get the battery out of the way. I'm gonna mark all these. Now I'm gonna crack open these lines and there should be some fuel pressure there as well. I knew it! I should have worn the orange gloves. It smells like petrol. Nice, fresh petrol. There are 2 months here as well that are torn, so now we can just pull it out. So now I'm gonna bolt this from the air filter box. Beautiful. So this thing should move slightly downwards, which it does, but it should also move very, very freely upwards, but it doesn't. That piston inside this fuel distributor is stuck, and that's what we need to fix. But I think someone was already in here. That's not BMW bolt. These are mangled, and 1 bolt is missing there as well. So let's see what lurks inside. This is the kit that I got on eBay, and this is a German company that specializes in K-Jetronic stuff, and it came with instructions in English and German as well, and it contains everything that we need to overhaul this devil's device. Now we can lift it up, and that's our stuck piston, and this is how easily it should move up. So there's nothing wrong with this mechanism. This piston here is stuck and not doing its job. So now we're gonna remove this torque screw here. So now I'm gonna soak it in this. This is rust loser. So let's see if I can pull it apart. Okay. That O-ring is done. This thing goes there. At least this part here is not filthy. And all of these cups and springs underneath have different height, so I have to keep the order and they need to go back into the same hole they came out. So I'm gonna clean all of this up, mark them, and when the reassembly comes I can put them in the exact same spot. 1, 2. I also made a mark on the body here, so that way I know where the number 1 is. So even if these numbers get erased, I can still store them in the right order. Take out number 1. So I put paper on the tip so I don't damage the metal. All right, so now we need to pull out this control piston housing, but it seems to be very stuck. It's coming out. It's coming out very slowly. The piston is still stuck inside. I need to strip down this housing. I'm going to remove the O-ring. So now I need to remove these things. It's incredibly dirty. So now we need to clean this housing thoroughly and unstuck this piston somehow. That's the thing that should move. It doesn't move. So I tried putting penetrating oil here, but it just doesn't want to budge. It's all metal, so I'm gonna dump it in some acetone and hopefully that dissolves the sludge and stuff that's inside. Okay, so while that piston is cooking, we can remove small filters inside these holes. There we are. That filter is really gummed up. Wow, this one is plugged solid. That's what was on the mesh filter. So this thing has been in there for a while. Absolutely no chance. All right, got some tractor fuel diesel from my neighbor, and we're gonna put that in there and leave it to sit in that overnight. See what tomorrow happens. Maybe give it a few love taps and try to unwedge it. It's the following day. The diesel didn't do anything. It's still pretty stuck. So I ended up putting it in this. This is for cleaning paint guns and whatnot. My neighbor gave me this, and it's been sitting in that for a couple hours. And it's very slippery, but it's still not budging. So it's time to deploy the hammer. I'm gonna give it a couple of smacks. Oh, it moves. It's coming out. It's finally out, and it doesn't appear to be damaged, which is good. That's wonderful. Maybe it can be saved after all. So let's treat it with some oil. Oh, I can't believe it. It's actually moving up and down really smoothly now. Look at that. All right, that's great news. This thing thankfully slides super smoothly now. I just realized I didn't put my microphone on, so if I sounded like I was talking from far away, that's what happened. The control piston is now in good working order. This paper filter, it's obviously bad, really filthy, and I'm not gonna use it. The guy that sold me the parts and that rebuilds these things told me not to use it. There's no replacement for this thing. These little mesh filters, they don't look very good. They have some damage and they're super filthy, and he told me also not to use these, so we're not gonna, because they can cause many issues in the end. But other than that, we assembled the control piston, cleaned all of this, and now we are ready to reassemble everything. There's also a way to adjust this thing with the screws that are behind these caps, and you adjust the height of the spring and the clips or whatever. And the tolerances for that are really, really small, and I'm not gonna touch that, or at least not right now. The instructions say to inspect the old membrane, and if it has any ping holes or damage or whatever, then this thing needs to be readjusted, but this looks good to me, so I'm just gonna leave it alone. So there's an O-ring inside here that we need to replace. Ooh, that one is actually split. So now we're gonna reinstall the control piston, and I'm gonna use a little bit of fogging oil for men. Then need to realign the spring. See, that's great. Okay, so now we're gonna put the springs back in. So after all, I am going to use the supplied Loctite 547. If I don't, I have a pretty good feeling this is going to leak, and I don't want that. So I'm gonna apply a very thin layer on both surfaces and see how it works out. This is the brand new membrane, and there is a specific way this goes in. There's this notch here. There's also a very tiny hole here that needs to line up with this hole there. So gotta be very careful about that. That is a very thin layer applied. Let's do it here as well. Okay, now we're gonna do the membrane. So that goes like that. All right, time to remarry these parts. So gingerly. And that's the hard part done. Now we're just gonna hope that this doesn't leak. There's another O-ring here. And it didn't do that before, did it? That will be it. stupid banjo bolts cleaned up, and all new crush washers. And now the intake boot, and this is the replacement one that doesn't have any holes that Pierre from Belgium gave me. That's everything buttoned up, but I'm not going to try to start it right now. I want to leave it for a few hours for Loctite to cure, maybe even until tomorrow, and then we're going to turn the key and see what happens. It's a couple of days later. I was busy with life, but it's time to find out if this third finally wants to run on its own. Who here thinks that that thing is going to leak? I do. But let's turn the key and see what happens. Come on, Bosch fuel mechanical injection. Give it a rest. That was kind of close. And nada again, but let's see if we have any leaks. Oh yeah, we do. Yep. So despite using Loctite, leaving it for a couple of days to dry, the damn thing is still leaking. Well, whatever. I want to see if it's going to start or not. Nope. Does not want to fire at all. But this sucks. Why don't you want to fire? The starter is beautifully sticking. There's also a thing called warm-up regulator, and they're known for going bad. Thankfully, I ordered a rebuild kit for it, so now I'm going to remove it and quickly open it, see what's what, replace some stuff, and hopefully that makes a difference as well. But I'm definitely going to have to take apart this stupid fuel distributor again and reseal it somehow. That's where the warm-up regulator lives. Should be some fuel there as well. Yep. That's the warm-up regulator, and that's the kit to rebuild it. First I'm gonna clean it, and then let's open it up. Four screws on the back. Oh yeah, that's bad. It looks like oil. This thing is frozen solid. Finally. So this does something. I don't know what. But that's cracked all the way around. So these two need to be cleaned up, and then we need to install the brand new one. Put that on the side, and now we need to take apart this thing here. So there's a clip that we need to remove. Now we need to remove this nut here. We can also check the resistance of this thing. It says 26 ohms here, 26.8 ohms. So now we need to carefully loosen these four screws here. And there's an O-ring there as well. All right, so now I need to clean this thoroughly. I think I found at least one issue with this thing. There are two lines on top of it. This one here is the feed line coming off the fuel distributor, and this is the return line. Inside this feed line, there's a small fine mesh filter. Hopefully you can see it, and that thing is clogged. I tried using brake cleaner, throttle cleaner, a bit of compressed air, and it just won't let anything flow through it. So I'm gonna put that chemical that I used to clean the fuel tank, MEC, whatever it's called, leave that for a bit. If that doesn't work, then I'm just gonna dig out this mesh filter altogether, because right now it's clogged and it's, well, stopping this thing from working. I ended up putting evapor rust in there because I ended up running out of ideas. I'm gonna leave that overnight and see if anything interesting happens tomorrow. If not, I'm just gonna jam the screwdriver in there and take that stupid mesh filter out. So I'm not sure if you can see, but that inside it's now nice and shiny. And after I used every single chemical that I had in the shop, throttle cleaner, brake cleaner, rust loser, that MEC poisonous thing, evapor rust, it's finally unclogged. And when I use compressed air, it goes through it, as well as the brake cleaner and anything else that I put into it. First the new O-ring, then the new membrane, whatever it is, with brand new screws, brand new O-ring. Good. Perfect. Gonna put a brand new gasket in here. This is all done, buttoned up. Hopefully it'll work as it should. All right, here we go again. Oh my God, it fired. Nothing. Thank you. No. I'm gonna go ahead and replace old fuel injectors. 5 of them. If you remember, I cleaned them in the previous episode. But I have brand new ones, and maybe these are bad after all. They're opening too soon and not holding pressure or whatever, leaking. So let's just take that out of the equation. Okay, that's all of them in. Okay, so I know it's flooding the engine. Yesterday when I rebuilt a warm-up regulator, and the car started for like 1 or 2 seconds, and that's because the cylinders were filled with fuel, and it started, but as soon as it started pumping more and more, it flooded the engine, and then it couldn't continue running anymore. So now I'm gonna remove the fuel pump fuse, turn it a couple of times just to see if it's going to fire at all. Did you see that? It started on the old fuel. It started, backfired, but started. So, definitely still flooding the engine. Now I'm gonna put back the fuel pump fuse and see if the new injectors did anything. Negative. Put the fuel pump fuse again. Incredible. It's actually running with the old fuel that's in cylinders when I pulled the fuel pump fuse. You bastard. It actually sounded decent when it started. It's so close. It's running. It's no longer running. So I made it crazy lean now. And it ran. That's all right, I'll make even more lean. Don't breathe. But it's running. You're alive, you vicious bastard. I gotta fix that leak ASAP. But it's running. Give it a bit of throttle. Oh! Actually runs good. I mean, not good, but I don't believe it. It's idling 1,000 RPM. The oil pressure light is off, and the thing is working. The important thing, will it restart now? It starts almost immediately now. Actually, not a ton of smoke in the back. Gotta fix that leak. After 26 years of sitting, it's finally idling. Finally. We can play around with the mixture and everything else and make it idle even better. Also, the compression is low. We need to do the engine flush. But first, I need to take care of this because leaking fuel, that's dangerous. I'm going to do all of this off camera because I already showed you how to do all of this. The fuel distributor is all back together. And I think my mistake initially is I didn't use enough Loctite. I only used the thin layer. So this time around, I was a bit more generous. So hopefully it seals better. If it doesn't, I'm going to be pretty mad. But to recap how I got the car running, it's obvious that someone was messing around with this thing in the past, and they also messed around with the mixture screw, which you shouldn't do, and they made the car run rich, and I'm talking Jeff Bezos rich. When you turn the mixture screw clockwise, that's to make the car run rich, anti-clockwise, lean. So what I did is I turned it all the way anti-clockwise until the screw stopped turning, and then I was slowly turning it clockwise in increments until the car was running and idling. That's the ballpark that we need, and as far as I understand, the proper way to adjust it is to get the car fully to the operating temperature, get one of those sniff things to put in the exhaust, and then based on how much crap comes out of the exhaust, you adjust the mixture. But right now we don't need to worry about that. The car was running, hopefully runs again. The thing that I'm worried about right now is the head gasket. Is it blown? Probably. Will it overheat? Probably. But let's find out. Fire it up. And it's idling. Is it leaking though? So far 9. That is good. You're shaking, my friend. Now it's time to find out if the temp gauge works and if this thing warms up. No smoke from the exhaust, which is marvelous. Let's see how it fires up. It's brand new. Ah, this makes me happy. Remember, the compression isn't very good, but we're gonna repeat that test now once the car is warm, because that's the proper way to do it. When I did it before, the cylinders were washed out, so we'll see. Thankfully, this stupid thing is not leaking. Really happy about that. Temp gauge appears to be slightly raising. It's starting to sound better. Oh, there's a massive exhaust leak somewhere. But you know what? It sounds halfway decent. This is incredible. All right, got a temperature laser thing to make sure that the block is not overheating. The head is 60, the block also 60. Halfway there until the middle, and then it's gonna be the key moment if it overheats. Doesn't have a fan clutch on, but worry about that later. I'm gonna put back the fan clutch. All right, fan clutch is in. I'm gonna walk around with a mask because the smoke is just a bit too much. Brilliant, it's not overheating. Still has the roar. All right, now it's nice and toasty, so I'm gonna turn it off and we're gonna check the compression again. But first I wanna make sure there's no fuel in the lines to wash out the cylinders. So I'm gonna remove the fuel pump fuse, crank it a couple of times until it stops starting, and then we can remove the spark plugs. That should do it. Now you can remove the spark plugs. The fuel pump fuse is out, ignition coil disabled, all the spark plugs removed, so we're gonna crank it 7-8 times and see what the compression is. If you remember from the previous episode, the highest cylinder we had was around 6 bar, the lowest one, 3 and 4, around 4 bar, which is just horrible. Good M20, well, that's what the book says, should have minimum 10 bar, and before anything else, it should be consistent across all cylinders. So a good engine will make more than 10 bars. This, no way, no. So wide open throttle. What do we have? What? 12. No freaking way. That's actually remarkably good. Well, I don't believe that. 12 again. No way! The engine is actually good. I can't believe it. I can't believe this. 11. We have a healthy engine. What? My dear viewers, I'm having a hard time believing this, but we actually have a healthy engine. From 1 to 5, we have around 12 bar, and 6th, it's 11 bar, so a bit lower, but still more than minimum, and that's healthy compression. That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. One thing that I forgot to mention in the previous video is when I had the low compression, I did put a bit of oil in the cylinders and then recheck the compression. It was still low. So that told me it's not the piston rings. And I looked with the endoscope inside the intake manifold, and I could see that the valves were really, really gummed up. And also inside here, I could see the exhaust valves that were also completely gummed up. So I just think they were not sealing properly before, and now that the engine was running, it cleaned them up a little bit, and the compression is restored. Nonetheless, we're gonna put engine flush in it, change the oil, and we also have to flush the cooling system, and then we can fine tune it. Now we're gonna use Liqui-Moly's engine flush. And look at that, no mayo, ketchup, or mustard on the oil cap. It would appear that we do have a good head gasket. Now we need to let it idle for 10 minutes and then drain the oil. No smoke from the exhaust, it's idling really nicely, right in the middle. Beautiful. That should do it. Let's drain the oil. And that oil was brand new, and now it's super black, which means that the engine flush did its thing. That's what came out of the filter. So the engine flush definitely did its job, but so did the oil filter. For oil, we're going with this flavor, Liqui-Moly 10W40, half synthetic with MOS2 additive. Remember, these engines were developed to run on mineral oil, so half synthetic, you get best of the both worlds. The grayish color, that's the MOS2 additive. Now let's drain coolant. I'm gonna disconnect the lower radiator hose. That doesn't look too bad. I was expecting a lot worse. So I'm gonna do the same thing I did in the previous episode, disconnect the coolant hose in the back of the head, put the garden hose in it, and see what comes out front. Continue doing that until the water is clear. So the expansion tank is clean. Good, I don't think we have any clogged passages in the engine. Coolant is now coming out very, very clean, which is great news. Now we're gonna install a brand new thermostat. See what I mean when I say Rhinestone seal is really good? Look how hard it is. Nothing is gonna go past that. Brand new thermostat. There's an arrow pointing up as to how the thermostat should be installed. Oh, by the way, I never checked if the alternator is working. Must be, since it didn't die so far. Oh, snap! The alternator is not working. Shut it down. That's not good. See, that's one of the most important things that I forgot to check. Here's the voltage regulator, removed. The brushes are somewhat worn, but nothing too bad, nothing that would cause issues. The brand, it's Lucas, which means it was already replaced. The original unit is Bosch, so it could be bad. Now I'm gonna check all of the wires on the alternator, especially the ground wires, make sure all of that is nice and clean. And if it's still not charging, then I'm gonna get this from the E30, because they share the same alternator, put it in and see if that resolves our charging issue. I cleaned up all of the grounds, put the old regulator in, and let's see if there's any change. Nope, still not charging, or charging very poorly, 12.9. There we go, but that's better. Should be around 14, but 13.3 is better. Okay, that's brilliant. It's charging now. Now we're gonna start it, let it fully warm up, and then I wanna recheck the compression on cylinder number 6 again, just to see if that came up closer to the others. Oh, look at that, 14 volts. We have a good alternator. And all I did was cleaned up the grounds and cleaned up the voltage regulator, and now it's charging perfectly. Excellent. I can't believe how well this engine works. No knocking noise, no valve tray noise, nothing. Just works perfect. And we haven't even tuned it yet properly. And by that I mean setting the ignition timing and the mixture as well. For now I'm just going by ear and it sounds perfect. So now that we've fixed the alternator and it's charging fully, the car is behaving a million times better. Just listen to this engine. Sounds buttery smooth. Look at the exhaust. No blue smoke, no black smoke, no gray smoke. Works perfect. bit of condensation, which is normal when the car sits. The temp gauge is in the middle, but look how nicely it revs. Nothing wrong with that engine. Absolutely nothing. Can you believe this? Because I'm having trouble believing this, that it works this good. Look at that idle. It works perfect. Absolutely perfect. All right, let's quickly check compression on cylinder number 6 again. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. She's back, boys and girls. With a vengeance. Look at that, that's cylinder number 6. It's more than 12 bar right now, and it was 11 before. So whoever says that engine flush products don't work, what do you say about that? Huh? And good oil as well. I give you the indestructible engine, the M20. After everything it's been through, it's perfect. Nothing wrong with this engine. Top of the piston actually cleaned up pretty decently, and so did the valves, no longer gummed up. Remember those scoring marks? I don't see them anymore. That cylinder looks perfect. So maybe all it was dirt from turning the engine over. Just beautiful cross-hatching. This engine is self-healing. How is this even possible? How can it look this good? The valves cleaned up as well. They were fully gummed up before. Top of the piston as well, looking a lot better than before. And look at the cross-hatching. All of that was filled with scoring marks that were apparently just dirt from turning the engine over that was stuck on the cylinder wall, and now it cleaned up with the engine running. This is insane. These cylinders were full of surface rust. And look at it now. It looks perfect. If someone told me that this was gonna happen, I wouldn't believe it. No way. No chance. I'm struggling to find the words here, and the spark plugs look perfect. It's burning the mixture perfectly. So, you know what's the good news here? The engine doesn't need a rebuild. I said in the previous episode, and I was like 101% confident in that this engine needs a complete rebuild. But now, why? It has perfect compression, it runs beautifully. Why would it take this thing apart? It is a survivor. And it's possible that this is a low mileage engine as well, because it has around 100,000 kilometers on the clock. Is that right? 93,000 kilometers. I have no way of knowing if that's original, but judging by everything, it's possible. Very, very possible. So the exhaust leak is coming from the mid-silencer. Looks like it rusted out here somewhere in the middle. Sounds ugly, so I'm gonna look up and see if I can order that to replace it, and then we can properly hear the engine. Now I wanna set ignition timing on this car, and if we look at the specification for it, it says dynamic ignition timing, 22 degrees before top dead center at 1,500 RPM. These are the markings on the wheel balancer. That's the top dead center, and Z is BTDC, before top dead center. To do this, the car needs to be fully warmed up. We need to disconnect the vacuum pipes on the distributor and unbolt the clamp that holds the distributor. That way I can move it and advance and retard the ignition. A friend is gonna hold the car at 1,500 RPM, and I'm gonna use this toy and make sure that the Z mark is lining up with the notch here. There you can see the marks on the wheel balancer. This goes to spark plug number 1, and this to the battery. So ideally you wanna have 3 people for this. One to hold the revs, another one to move the distributor, and another one to look at the marks. So maybe I get a whole team of engineers here just to do this. I have an idea. I'm gonna replace the human with filler gauges. Perfect. That's exactly 1,500 RPM. Okay, so now I'm gonna disconnect the vacuum pipes. It's way off. Molto bella. I am very, very happy with this. It's running super smooth. Superbly smooth. I revived a fair share of dead cars, but I think this one is the most satisfying so far. From completely destroyed car left to rot for over 20 years to perfectly smooth running vehicle. My mind is blown by this car, really is. I also had to read a book to understand how the mechanical fuel system on this car works. It's actually quite simple, except it's not. But once you start learning how the components affect each other, how they work in synchrony, it's not that difficult to tune or repair. And, well, I don't think it needs anything else in the fuel system because it's working spotless now. Anyway, what do you say we make another impossible happen? can we get this car driving again? The brake fluid reservoir, that's completely missing. So no clutch, no brakes. Brakes we can do without. I can brake with my feet. And clutch, we kind of need that. And all of these lines are open, so I'm gonna have to replace everything. These are the parts that will hopefully restore brakes and clutch on this car. We have clutch master cylinder, clutch slave cylinder, brake master cylinder, used brake fluid reservoir. New one is no longer available. This one is in decent shape. Some odds and ends, so let's get to it. Not much space to work here with, but there you can see brake master cylinder and clutch slave cylinder. Soak the brake lines. Very important to use flare wrenches, otherwise you're risking stripping these brake lines. There's a bracket in the way. This is much more involved than I thought. Ooh. That one hurt. I mean, I think we have blood spillage. Ah, yes. That'll be the brake master cylinder. Now I'm gonna start with the clutch master cylinder. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, there's blood. Ooh, that's actually a very good wound. It's deep. I'm patched. Let's continue. Welcome to the interior. Just noticed that, by the way. Now we need to remove this lower panel and disconnect the cylinder from the clutch pedal. What's up with that? Yeah. I don't know what that is. Do you know? Looks like a speaker. It's connected to nothing. That's the one that we need to disconnect. Pretty sure there's no way to pull that thing out without removing the brake booster, but let's try. No chance, dude. So got this from my landlord. Hopefully it's a bit easier with this. Come on. Finally it's out. Thing is shot. All right, new one going back in. You stupid thing. Done. Don't ask me how I did it, but it's done. The clutch slave cylinder is in. Done. All of the lines bolted back to the master cylinder, and this was a nightmare. Absolute torture. My hands are beaten. That will be the slave cylinder. Gonna unbolt the line first. Perfect. I think while we're already here, let's change the transmission oil. Drain plug, fill plug. But first we're gonna clean them. So first we're gonna do the fill plug. Oh, that was suspiciously loose. Doesn't look horrible. We're going with ATF. Okay. Let it drip out. That's done. Clean reservoir going in. Brake fluid reservoir and clutch line are in. Fresh brake fluidity. Time to bleed the clutch line. There we are. Hello, bubbles. Don't drip on me. This is a brand new t-shirt. Actually, freshly washed hoodie. A potato, tomato. Let's see if we have anything. Why, yes, we do. That's firm. I can't even push it with my hand. Oh, yes. Let's bleed more. So I think we have a working clutch pedal. The only thing now is if the clutch is actually good, if it's not cooked or stuck together. So the clutch pedal feels okay, but I think we don't have clutch because I don't hear any movement whatsoever in the transmission. I think the clutch is all rusted together and stuck. Well, only one way to find out. The car is stone cold, and before we find out if the clutch works, I want to pop the oil cover off and check the valve clearance again. I did it in the previous episode, but that was before I started the car. Now that it's been running for a while, it's just a good thing to check it again and make sure everything's within spec. Because valves have moved, everything has cleaned up. We need to make sure that's still good. All of them readjusted. They were a bit out of spec, but now they're perfect and I can put back the valve cover. It's stone cold now, so let's see how it starts. Well, Well, not good. Okay, so the cold start is a bit of a struggle. Still need to look into that, but now that it started, it sounds great. Sure does. The big question, does the clutch work? Oh yeah, that's right, reverse is up, first is down. Here we go. It's moving. Reverse. Yes! It is a running and driving vehicle, gentlemen. That reminds me, I have to connect the steering column. Steering column is reconnected. What do you say we take it outside for the first time under its own steam? Starts beautifully now. We still need to sort out the brakes, but I have a handbrake. There we are. Oh, this window doesn't want to go down. Oh yeah. Oh, that's too fast. Check me out. Even the horn is working. Yes. The clutch actually feels okay. It's a bit too high, but it is okay. I can't wait to fix that exhaust leak. Then we can hear the exhaust note of the car properly. But have a look, man. It is a running and driving vehicle. 41-year-old, this thing. And look how good it sounds. What a roar. It's the following day. The car is dead cold again, and I want to do a few checks regarding that cold start. This car has a cold start injector, or the 7th injector, located underneath the intake manifold here. And its purpose is to spray a bit more fuel into the intake when the car is cold and help it warm up. It's controlled by this temperature switch here. And now I'm gonna remove the connector on that injector, crank the car, see if we're getting power to it. If yes, that most likely means that this thing is good. And then I'm gonna unbolt the injector itself, see if it's spraying actually, maybe it's clogged or whatever, and take it from there. All right, let's just give it a couple of cranks and see if we're getting power to it. No power. So I have a brand new temperature switch here. I'm gonna just plug the connector in and see if that makes any difference at all. It actually started now, immediately. So I think we have a bad temperature switch. So let's plug back the old one. Well, now it's running again. Maybe the contacts were just bad on that thing, and when I unplugged it, plugged it back in, made it work. Anyway, back to the brakes. Now we're gonna try to bleed them. Let's see if we have a flow. So far, nada. That is a solid niet. Let's go and jump on the brake pedal. Could be that the lines are clogged or the caliper itself. Nothing. All right, let's try another one. Nothing. So no brakes to the rear. Absolutely nothing. Bone dry. No. Nothing here either. I just looked around and there are no valves or pressure regulators for the front brakes. This brake pipe here comes straight from the brake master cylinder, and I'm thinking it's probably rusted inside because it was open for God knows how many years. So I'm gonna crack it open here, see if anything comes out, and confirm my suspicion. All right. Wait a minute. We have a flow there. Actually, a good flow. So let's close that. Or maybe the hose collapsed. If we're lucky, the hose collapsed. Yeah, that comes out very easily. This has some surface corrosion, but it's actually in decent shape. All right, now we need to get this line off here. Oh, that was really on there. If you don't see anything coming out, that means this line has collapsed and it's not letting, yep, nothing coming out of there. So this line is clogged. That's actually sort of good news. because this is much easier to replace than all of the metal pipes and stuff. The not so bad news is I didn't order this. I always do order new brake lines. This time around, I didn't. Let me get on the phone, see if I can get one today. So fronts I can get today at my local parts store in about 2 hours. The rears, not so much. They're special orders, so those are gonna come next week. But if we can get front brakes to work, that would be neat. We can drive with that. Let's go to the other side and just make sure that this thing is clogged over there as well. Oh yes, brake fluid is already coming out. Perfect. Confirmed. Both soft brake lines at the front are clogged. Let's give it some compressed air, see what it says. Plugged solid. I've actually never seen one this bad before. But this is the original brake line, 1979. Let's troubleshoot the rear now. There are 4 rubber lines in the back, according to real OEM, 2 per side. So we have one here that has a bender bolt. Never seen that on the brake line before. And there's the other one, right over there. Conveniently located above the fuel filter. So we have brake fluid coming out after the valve and before it goes into the soft line. So it seems that we have the same case in the back, clogged soft lines. Meanwhile, while I'm waiting for those to get, what do you say we take this middle silencer off and see if we can find that hole? And maybe my neighbor can weld it or something. I do have a brand new one coming, but that's also coming next week. And I'd like to make some progress today. I can even reuse all of this hardware because it ain't rusty. Okay. Now this is a brilliant piece of engineering, this exhaust. The way it was mounted, brackets and whatnot, and how easy it is actually to remove. Come on, I said it's easy to remove, don't hold me back now. There it is. So there you can see a lot of black soot, so that's where it's leaking in the middle. Probably moisture or whatever got in there and just rusted those 2 pipes. Okay, so my landlord is gonna try and help me and bodge this together. So we're gonna cut the welds here, 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 on the back as well. Cut this pipe off, then weld whatever needs welding there and weld it back. Just chopped it off and there's our hole. That's the exhaust leak. The other one doesn't have any holes. So gonna weld that and then weld all of this back together. Too thin. Unfortunately, the metal is just too thin, cannot be welded. It can, but it would take way too much to make it happen, and it's just not worth it when I already ordered a new one. The problem is, this is why video is delayed. I now have to wait 5 days to get the replacement exhaust, put it on the car, and complete the video. So now, hopefully you can understand why video cannot come out every week. Now I'm gonna go pick up the brake lines. Let's see how it sounds without the exhaust. This is going to be loud. That's crazy loud. Yeah, I don't like that. Here's the brand new brake line from Techstar. 13 euros. Same one on the Parto, less than 5. It's funny how everything is always more expensive at your local store. Anyway, let's plop it in. Nice twist. Finished the other side as well. Reconnected the pressure bleeder. And let's see if we have brake fluid coming out of this caliper. I believe we do. Yes, beautiful. And it's already clean. Beautiful. We have front brakes. So I'm gonna replace this temperature switch because I have a new one. And I did read that these quite often go bad. So let's call it preventative maintenance. The new one is bigger, but the spec is the same. After 5 days of waiting, the exhaust is finally here. What's wrong with that picture? Yes, it is a completely wrong exhaust. Not even the same brand that I ordered and totally different part number. I have no idea what they were thinking. To say that I'm frustrated, it's an understatement. But I just realized that this exhaust is not that expensive from the dealer. Just called them, it's 167 euros. This one on the internet is 123, so not that big of a difference, and that's a genuine part. The key thing though, they can get it tomorrow morning, so hopefully I pick it up then and we can finally put this thing back together. The exhaust is finally here, and I'm actually excited about it. This is a genuine part, straight from the dealer, and it didn't even cross my mind to check with them, because normally parts like this for a 40-year-old car, they're going to be discontinued and or have a ridiculous price. But no, 167 euros, which is pretty good for a genuine exhaust, and 1 day delivery time, so credit where it's due. This one is made by Boysen. Isn't that the character from Only Fools and Horses? Nah, Boyce is the name of that legend. Anyway, got the new gaskets here, rubbery thingies that hold the exhaust in place, stainless steel bolts, and copper nuts. Okay, the exhaust is going in. Bow, chicka, bow. All right. Do we flip you now? That is good. That's one simple exhaust. This is beautifully designed two-piece bracket. The exhaust going back in. Beautiful. The exhaust is completed. The brake lines. I received these, let's call them middle brake lines, but these with weird banjo fitting at the end, I ordered them 4 days ago and they still didn't even ship yet. So they're not gonna come in time. I'm getting really impatient. I need to drive the car, finish the video. So I removed this one from the car. I used this piece of wire here, went through the line, and now it's no longer clogged. I'm gonna do the same with the other one, and hopefully we can bleed the brakes then, because right now the rear lines are so full of air that I don't even have front brakes. And just like a plumber would say, this pipe is unclogged. You probably can't see it, but this is like completely black. So needless to say, never do this with your brake lines, just get new ones. But for the purpose of getting the car driving right now for 5 minutes, we're gonna do this bodge. Check it out. We have rear brakes. The bodge worked. So I can finally bleed all 4 corners. The car has been sitting for several days while I was waiting on parts. It's sort of cold, around 8 degrees Celsius. I'm not sure how good of a cold start this car should have. What I do know is the BMW struggled with the M20 to start it cold, hence the 7th injector and all that mess. The new temperature switch is in, hopefully that helps, but we're gonna turn the key and see how it starts. I'm not sure, is that normal? I have no idea. Takes a little while. Sounds great when it's cold. And listen how quiet the exhaust is now. Lovely. Now, the $3 question. Do we have brakes? Nice idle. Oh, the brake pedal is nice and firm. Oh. That brakes better than the E30. I mean, the brake pedal feels better than the E30. Wonderful. Anyway, I'm gonna put the hood back on and then we're gonna take it for a spin. Here we go. So, the discs are very, very rusty. Bon voyage. No traction. Brakes. Yes, they are stopping. It's very rattly in here. There's no seal on that window. You really have to be a man to handle the steering without power steering. But it drives. Second gear. Yes! So we have a cat leg transmission. Bottom left is the first, then up in the middle is second, and down is 3. Racing gearbox, because racing car. Wheel spin. It's hilarious how this car has no traction whatsoever. There we have it, ladies and gents. After 26 years, the car is running and driving. Let's burn some rubber. Still got it. And that, kids, is how we resurrect a completely dead car the proper way. Obviously, there's still a very long way to go with this project. It still needs some fine-tuning, especially the mixture. But for a car that's been sleeping for the past 2.5 decades, this is a remarkable achievement. I was absolutely convinced that engine is going to need a full rebuild, but now that it runs so well, the compression is good, I don't think so. This car is a survivor and testament to good old school German engineering, where everything is fixable and not made of cheese. I think in the next episode we're going to take it to dyno. I've never taken any of my cars to dyno, and I'm kind of curious to see what kind of power it's going to put out and to confirm that the engine is indeed healthy. So stay tuned for that. The next video is going to be on the E30. We're taking that car to German tooth inspection, and Project Chicago. That's just a couple of weeks away, and that engine has some sort of sucking device on top of it. Or was it a blowing device? Not sure. It's very broken and you're gonna love it. But I do hope you're excited as I am from bringing this car back to life. It's been a battle, but we won. Thank you very much for watching. Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed the video. It helps out the channel a lot, and I'll see you very soon. Ciao!